Hello, pulmonary rehab friends. Julia O'Shea, respiratory therapist, lung lady, here to talk about stress management tools, just basic understanding of how stress impacts the body and the brain, things like that. So it can be a sensitive topic, especially if you are someone who's living with lung disease, because certainly just the thoughts and things that can come up emotionally can cause a lot of stress in your body, combined with shortness of breath and things like that that you're dealing with day to day. So by no means am I a psychologist, I'm a respiratory therapist, but I'm here to share with you just a little PowerPoint talking about the physiology and things like that. So I hope you like it. And away we go. Let's get this PowerPoint up on the screen. Okay. So good morning. Let the stress begin, right? Sometimes this is what life feels like. Certainly in our current time where we are in the middle of a pandemic, COVID-19, social distancing, lots of people struggling right now on top of all the other stuff that's going on in the world. So let's talk about the different types of stress. Oops, we went ahead here. Okay, so stress is a part of life. You guys all know that. There's a saying that there's two darts in life. One is guaranteed, one is optional. So yes, there are bad things that are guaranteed in life. But how you choose to react to that is the optional piece. So that's this is like a glass half full kind of talk. So how can we look at things a little differently and make choices and recognize what we're feeling, not denying the emotions, the grief, all of that, but knowing that there's always choices we can make. So if there's a chronic medical diagnosis like lung disease, at the time, it can feel completely overwhelming, just that feeling of lack of control, maybe some hopelessness. But hopefully through resources and support, you have a way to change the way you look, the way you see things, and improve your understanding of what's really happening. So that's the choice piece. All right, so I like to throw this in here because the stages of grief, 6 phases of grief, can definitely tie into a medical diagnosis. So there can be the initial diagnosis, and maybe at first there is confusion or shock because you may not even understand what is going on. And then maybe even going through stages of denial where you think the tests are wrong or the doctor doesn't know what they're talking about. Of course, maybe there's anger because you're just angry at the situation, angry at your past, angry at yourself. Why did this happen? Maybe you don't even know. Maybe you go through a bargaining phase where, you know, if you believe in a higher power or whatever may be, you think, oh, if I pray, if I go to church, if I do good things, if I do all this stuff, will that change the outcome? And then, of course, depression can be present through all of this. And then maybe you reach acceptance. Like, this is what has been handed to me, and I would like to move forward and do the best I can from here. And of course, at any point, you could slip into any of these again. So it's not static. It's not like you go through these stages and then you're done. So this is life, right? So right now we are all probably feeling loneliness, lack of contact with our loved ones, and that's grief. We can all feel that and experience it. And at times, depending on how you're feeling, you may need professional help. And it says here with panic disorders, but it could be anything. It could be, you know, anxiety-based stuff. It could be depression. It could be anger, all of these things. So definitely being open to treatment and professional help, because sometimes it's just what we need to help us get through this. Of course, support groups. So Pulmonary Rehab is an amazing support group. The American Lung Association has the Better Breathers Club. The COPD Foundation has a lot of resources out there. There's even interstitial lung disease support group now here at the medical center with Dr. Menon. So there are resources out there, and this is just to help you understand that you're not alone in this. There are other people in the world who are dealing with this. Just being open to that. All right, so stress is our friend. Again, this is like that glass half full, right? That's what I'm here to kind of help you guys out with. But there is this research scientist named Kelly McGonigal. You could look her up. She gives a TED Talk, and just kind of the brief summary is that for a long time she spoke about how bad stress is for the body, and then she did more research, and what she figured out was that stress is part of life, and it's not so much the stress that is detrimental to our health, but how we respond to stress. Because stress is something that is part of life, and it actually helps us to grow and evolve and adapt to different situations. So you could think of stress as helping to develop resiliency in a way. But if we look at stress as very bad, this is going to kill me, then the gloom and doom, then our body will respond with more negative chemicals being released, which can cause things like heart attacks. So the stress response hormones that she started to study relate to actually the positive aspects of stress. So there's this specific hormone or stress chemical called oxytocin. So you may have heard of this. This is the what is exchanged between a new mother and a baby, sometimes referred to as the cuddle hormone. But what she found out, and other researchers found out, is that oxytocin is produced when you say you are in a stressful situation, you're overwhelmed, and you realize you can't hold all of that on your own, and you reach out for help. So maybe you call a friend or family member, and that vulnerability or that openness to reaching out releases oxytocin. So oxytocin, when they've done studies on how this impacts your body, it actually helps to open up the vessels around the heart. And it benefits not only you, but the person who is helping you. So if I reach out to my brother for help, he has the same chemical release in his body with the oxytocin. So while stress does release, cortisol, adrenaline, all these things that prepare us for fight or flight, there is the positive side of stress, especially when we reach out for help. Not easy to do, but just tucking that into your bag of tricks as a way that the body can respond positively from stress. All right, simply stated, there are no ups and downs. If there are no ups and downs in your life, it means you're dead. So kind of funny, but not so funny, but true. So there's always going to be things that we're dealing with in life. So stress, your health in your brain. So this is the part of the talk that I get excited over, and I'm just going to jump right in. So first of all, I'm not a neuroscientist or neurobiologist. I'm a respiratory therapist, but I'm very interested in how the neurobiology of the brain in regards to the stress response works. I became interested in this a while back when I started to do a little bit more research, mostly through a friend of mine who was giving presentations related to post-traumatic stress response and the brain and activities like yoga. So what I was starting to piece together was that when people have a hard time breathing, such as pulmonary patients, this can cause a reaction inside your brain and nervous system that I just refer to as trauma breathing. So when you get into that vicious cycle of shortness of breath and your body starts to respond by increasing your heart rate, anxiety may start to kick in, panic, you become more short of breath because of all the neurotransmitters and different hormones that are being released. And so you get in this cycle, and it becomes very strong in your system. And I started to link this to almost like a post-traumatic stress response type of thing. So as I learned more about the brain, it just started to make sense to me. So I just want to briefly go over very, very basic anatomy, or even, yeah, I don't even want to use the word anatomy because I'm not going to go too in depth on this. But when we look at the brain, I just want you to understand that we have the top part of the brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for the textbook word is executive function. I think of this as the reasoning, the kind of like the supercomputer of the body. It's how we want the body and the nervous system to function at an optimal level. And then the lower part, sometimes referred to as lizard brain or primitive brain. This is a part of the brain that is responsible for survival. And we use it every day. It's important in our lives. I'm using it right now to give this presentation, but we want to find the right balance. And in the lower brain, there is this structure, this green little almond-shaped structure that is called the amygdala. And this is basically like our alarm center. So when something happens to us, a threat or whatever it may be, it sounds the alarm and it releases certain neurotransmitters that kind of trigger the response that's needed. So when we were cave people and this part of our brain would react, that was how we survived. We knew we had to fight, we had to flee, we had to freeze, we had to hide, whatever it may be. And what is happening, or what can happen in our current society, is that this part of the brain can be triggered too much or too easily. And that can, examples of that could be obviously the news. I don't need to say anything else, but it could also be stimulations like from your screens, your phones, computers, things like that. Even watching a scary movie. So just different things that can trigger this part of the brain that we don't really need that part of the brain to be triggered, because it's not like we have, tigers chasing after us. There might be things in life where we need that part of the brain to respond, but for the most part, we want to find balance. So in a perfect situation, we would have the external stimulus, whatever it is, and the top part of our brain would process and, apply reasoning as to what is really happening and respond appropriately, versus the lower part of the brain is like the fly off the handle, get crazy, heart starts pumping really fast, things like that. Okay, so that's just basic anatomy. Let's get into this next area called neuroplasticity. So you may have heard of this before, and it's kind of like the meaning is very similar to how it sounds, in the sense of neuro relating to the brain, and the plasticity is the part that is malleable or changeable. So it was up until, I believe it was sometime in the 1990s, that scientists thought that the brain was rigid and that it couldn't change. And they did studies and they found out that that was incorrect, that the brain is possible, the brain can change and form new called neural pathways. And the upper part of the brain, or the executive function area, is responsible for evolving and adapting to our environment. So neuroplasticity, we want this to be a positive thing. We want the changes to improve our well-being, improve our resiliency, and how we respond to stress. So now there are things that can help to increase neuroplasticity. If you went on the internet and you searched for this, things that increase neuroplasticity, you would get tons, thousands of different recommendations. Something as simple as brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand increases neuroplasticity, because it's basically anything that gets your brain's attention that is like, this is different, you know, like your brain likes patterns. It likes to find the easiest way to do things. So, you know, you could brush your teeth with your, you know, say you're right-handed with your right hand and not even think about anything. Your brain just knows what to do because it's done it so many times. But when you change it up and you use your non-dominant hand, then the brain, it catches the attention and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? This is something different. And it starts to develop new pathways and change the way that it responds to things. So this is just a few. These are areas that I'm more well versed in. And this is the tools. These are the tools that I can offer you. So mindfulness, meditation, conscious breathing, yoga, movement, and exercise. And I'll talk more about my dogs later because they're part of this as well. All right, so mindfulness. If we were all in a group in person, I would hand you a very, very full cup of water and I would have you pass it around the group. And the idea is to not spill the water. And in order to do that, you have to focus. And that focus, that concentration on that detail, not spilling that water as you pass it to other people, that's mindfulness. So I like this definition by Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He is one of the leading experts at the University of Massachusetts. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And the picture here, so going back to my barking dogs, I think about this when I walk my dog. So a dog does not know how to be anything but mindful. They are always present in the current moment. And when I'm walking my dogs, I'm probably starting to process my day, maybe what happened earlier, maybe things I'm anticipating. So I might have this whirlwind of thoughts that starts to go through my head, and they're just thinking about sniffing around and finding the next place that they're going to go pee. So this is not easy, but it can be easier than you think. So you can practice mindfulness when you're eating, you know, just focusing on your food. When you go for a walk, just pay attention to the sounds, to the leaves, the animals, the grass, whatever you're walking through. Washing your car, just paying attention. You know, it's like the old movie Karate Kid, wash on, wash off. So paying attention to the details and what you're doing. And so just focusing on one thing at a time. This helps to improve or increase our neuroplasticity in a positive way. All right, so other benefits, helps us to recalibrate our mind, so that whirlwind that I was talking about will slow down, which can lead to increased clarity. This is what allows our inner creativity to come through, promotes open-mindedness, which allows us to see problems and solutions from multiple perspectives and angles. Sounds like a really good way to operate in the world if that's a practice that you want to incorporate. So how do we do that? So just finding time in whatever you're doing and just being present with that one thing. So if you want to set aside a practice time, you could do this for a couple minutes a day. Just anything that allows us to create these changes inside of our brain that can affect our behavior. Always stay non-judgmental and accepting, and this quiet time allows us to kind of be more curious as to what's going on in our lives. So again, non-judgmental, but just being open. All right, so meditation can be kind of associated with mindfulness, I would say, but I think of this as finding time for yourself. So quiet time maybe in a room, maybe with no one else around, and just allowing yourself to be with your thoughts. Something that I have used before is, when I sit down to meditate, of course, my mind starts spinning and I have all these thoughts going through my head. So I call it doing a thought download. So I'll have my pen and paper and I just write all this stuff down. Once it's out of my head, then I don't need to hold on to it anymore because it's right there on the paper. Meditation, you can use the breath, and I'll talk more about the breath in a second. And of course, no pressure. There's, I know when I was, starting to meditate, and I would tell my husband, I'm not doing it right. I don't know how to do it. And he would just laugh at me. So no pressure. Conscious breathing. So again, these things kind of build on each other and they're all kind of connected. The mindfulness, the meditation, conscious breathing. So paying attention to how we breathe. And if you're going through pulmonary rehab, I have taught you this and kind of said this many, many times, but being aware of the breath is a very powerful tool. The breath is very strongly connected to our nervous system. And I'm not speaking to, crazy breath exercises or what we sometimes call pranayama. I'm just talking about breath awareness. So the breath is one of those things in our body that it's visible, right? So you can see the way the chest moves or the belly moves when you breathe. So you can use that as a focus. You can feel it certainly as the air moves in and out. So you can use that as a focus. You can hear it, right? So the air as it's moving. So many ways to kind of anchor yourself through your breathing. And then just practicing the breathing techniques that you were taught, the pursed lip breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, 3-part breath. All of those things should be relaxing in your body. So not stimulating the nervous system, keeping it more on the relaxed side. And then something else to think about is for all those times that maybe you've been short of breath and you've been anxious and panicky, how many times do you set aside to practice when you're feeling good? So if we can practice and create this new memory in our bodies of calm breathing, then we have the same ability to impact our nervous system. So starting to change, again, those neural pathways, the neuroplasticity piece comes in. Okay, so yoga. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, obviously, because some of you know I do teach Kayu yoga. And something that I like to say from the beginning, and I have another picture coming up, is that in my opinion, yoga should not be focused on as a fitness activity, which is what a lot of people do in the United States. They want to work out, they want to be flexible and strong, and so they go to their yoga mat. And there's even hot yoga and all these other different styles, which is fine if that's what people are looking for. But for me personally, I don't think yoga was meant to be practiced that way. So yoga, first of all, it's not a religion. It's not Hinduism. It does come from India, and it is, depending on the text you look at, 4,000, 8,000 years old. It's been around for a very long time. And it was designed to support people way back when. And it's evolved and it's changed. And I believe it will continue to change to support our modern society. So my opinion is that yoga should be practiced in a way that we can access the breath, the mind, the body, all those things, which is, the meaning of the word yoga, which is to yoke or to unite, but in such a way that it's deeply therapeutic. So we have to be in the part of our nervous system that is responsible for relaxation, regrowth, repair, sometimes referred to as rest and digest. So kind of the opposite of that amygdala response that I was talking about earlier. So you have the fight or flight, and then you have rest and digest. So we want to be doing more relaxation. So yoga, tai chi, meditation, there's several different practices that are out there that help us tap into more of that relaxation part of our nervous system. All right, so here's my funny picture. What yoga is not, it's not about being flexible. In fact, most of my students, including myself, I'm not a highly flexible person. If you ask me to touch my toes, I'm going to be like, I don't think so. So I practice to be more connected to my body and to understand more about myself. And the other part that I see this as is a way to promote not just longevity, but the ability to stay mobile, active, freedom inside. So, thinking about as your body ages, trying to preserve what you have and not lose any more mobility. So that would be more of the physical side of yoga. And I just think it's super important for everybody, and especially if you have lung disease. So I talked about this earlier, all the accessory muscles, the mechanics of breathing. So trying to keep the chest open to promote better breathing, to promote better mechanics, space for the lungs to work. All right, so really quickly, there was a pilot study that one of our pulmonologists, Dr. Kaminsky, put together, and he studied the 3-part breath with people who have COPD. And this was a way to help people who didn't have access to pulmonary rehab. So of course they did testing before, and then this part of the study was everyone was taught the 3-part breath, and then they had to practice it 15 minutes a day, which is kind of a long time if you think about it. And then they did the testing afterwards, and what they found out was that the results were pretty much the same as if they had gone through pulmonary rehab, which is just astounding. Their walk tests improved, they felt less short of breath, quality of life was reported to be better, well tolerated, no adverse side effects to this type of breathing. So pretty cool stuff. Okay, lastly, I'm going to talk about movement and stress. And I am not even sure what kind of animal that is, but you guys have all probably seen National Geographic, where you have the tiger, the lion, cheetah, whatever, chasing the animal in the Serengeti or something. And the animal narrowly escapes. And what they may or may not show you is how the animal releases the trauma of the chase. So obviously, in order for that animal to run at high speeds and escape, there is a lot of adrenaline pumping through its body. So full on stress response. And then what the animal will do once it's over is it'll shake. It'll find a way to physically release the trauma so that it can do what it needs to do again for survival. So animals are a great teacher. They don't hold on to their stuff the way humans do. Even my dogs, who you just heard, they may get into a scuffle with another dog, and pretty much the first thing they do is they shake. So they shake off the emotions or the fight or whatever happened. And unfortunately for us humans, we kind of do the opposite. So when something stressful happens, we want to curl up in a ball and eat bonbons and watch Netflix, when really we should think about movement, exercise, going for a walk, helping to release that stress. And this ties into neuroplasticity, of course. So when we're doing an activity, maybe something that we don't do routinely, it catches our brain's attention and it can start to rewire. So that's also part of the yoga piece too. So when we're doing these poses that are very unfamiliar, we don't do them in our day-to-day lives or the movements, our brain is like something different's happening. I need to form new neural pathways that pertain to this new activity. Okay, lastly, I'm going to read this poem by Rumi, The Guest House. So this being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Okay, that's not my dog, but I hope to connect a little bit more with each of you. And if you are interested in the Kayut yoga that I teach, please let me know. Right now, we're offering 2 free classes a week through the medical center, both for myself, and then I have another Kayut teacher. And then I also teach classes at a local studio. So let me know how I can support you in any way, and just do your best. Take care of yourself, take care of your lungs, and until next time, love your lungs. All right, bye-bye.